Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So today's going to be a relatively interesting video because I really wanted today just talk and take maybe a revisit to basically talk about why they really ended the unemployment program to begin with. Because as most of you guys know, the sad thing is that there are several states that have now actually officially ended. Now there are a lot of lawsuits, and we talked about it in a couple past videos, including one that I believe it's literally just called the Great News Change, which is about certain lawsuits that are happening. I'll put that at the very end screen if you guys haven't checked it out. Huge thanks if you guys already have. But the idea right now is because there are a lot of articles that are popping up currently at this time, or some that have already popped up earlier this month, so basically about 2 weeks ago, that talks a little bit about the motivation to why unemployment actually even ended to begin with. And even though we are technically 1 to 2 weeks later, at the time unemployment didn't actually physically end. They were just planning to end. But the sad thing is that now today unemployment has already now actually officially ended, at least certainly in a few of the states. Thankfully most states are able to stay on. So today I really just want to talk about the motivation to why it really ended in the end, and about whether or not there is a chance for it to come back, or basically how the motivation to why they ended is going to potentially impact what they end up deciding to do with unemployment. Because the story, as most of you guys know, is that a lot of these states, the claim or the reasoning to why they gave to why they had to end unemployment was because of workers shortages. But there's now a lot of research that is coming up to suggest that there might have been a lot of other things behind the scenes. So we're going to talk all about that in today's video. But maybe, as always, before we begin, remember to smash the like button, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos and other finance topics, and actually especially maybe feel free to comment your personal thoughts to why you think unemployment really ended, or the motivation behind it, or what, just honestly just really any personal thoughts about this at all. Because I think the idea, and it's important to note, I think real fast, is because when it comes to anything with politics, we try to balance between what has happened, but there's always going to be a part of politics that has a little bit more of a personal opinion to it, because at the end of the day, a huge part of politics is talking about what happens in the future instead of just what has happened in the past, and the future we don't actually know yet. So that's where there has to be something that's opinion. So hopefully that's a little bit understandable. With that being said, let's get this video started. So when it came to the unemployment, like when they first started to do all of these early ending, the belief and reasoning to why they really sadly had to end it early in the end was really because, according to them, it was because of worker shortages. It was because a lot of companies were trying to find workers to go back to work, but it was because it was difficult. That's the reason why they had to do this. However, there's a lot of research, and actually some of this is actually just statistical numbers right now, for example, that's stated about how at this current time they found that there are actually about 8.2 million fewer jobs that exist than compared to before the pandemic. So in other words, before April of this year. And we say this because April is technically the 1-year anniversary from when we really entered into lockdown. And many people believe that it's because of that reason. And actually it's literally right there, is that because there are so many jobs that have already been lost ever since the pandemic, or basically all throughout the pandemic. It just means that there's physically actually less jobs out there than that actually physically exists for people to actually physically go back to. And what has actually been very interesting is that there's a lot of numbers right now. For example, one that comes from JP Morgan. The long story short is, instead of looking at all these complicated numbers and all that, although you're welcome to scan, I know it's a little bit hard to see, but really what they really found out is that ever since a lot of the states that have already ended unemployment, or really about the difference between the states that declared they were going to end and the states that thankfully are able to stay, is that there really hasn't been too much of a change or difference between what the job reports look like, what the unemployment numbers look like, and all of the numbers and statistics. That's also the reason why we share the unemployment numbers every single week, because I know there's a lot of people that they're just trying to get their unemployment, but they're not really concerned about the numbers and all that. But the numbers are actually very important because aside from, as we've mentioned in past videos, is aside from the fact that they will impact a lot of future programs of whether or not we will see further extension, it also does sadly impact on the reverse side as well, whether or not unemployment will be able to stay until the originally intended date, or in this case get actually sadly, let's just say, pushed ahead or basically shortened than we had originally thought. So the reasoning to this is because they found that a lot of these numbers haven't really changed too much. So when they try to bring up the argument about the worker shortage situation, is that there's a lot of debate about whether or not this is actually accurate, but it really kind of adds on to what a lot of people believe right now is one of the reasons why they ended unemployment is really because they wanted to kind of use this as a little bit of an experiment to see whether or not by ending unemployment early, or that basically by doing such a thing, how it would impact the job market, the numbers, whether it would actually get people back to work. Right now at this time, according to a lot of the numbers, it hasn't happened. Of course, unemployment has only ended in only those select states that have ended early, probably only about 2 weeks ago. So we still don't have, it's not like an extended period of time. But at this current time, I think is that a lot of people believe, and it's actually what they say also, is that this whole thing, part of it was really just because of an experiment, because they just wanted to see what happens. It is just a little bit of a sad side is that to do this experiment, they kind of had to do this experiment during a time when it was probably much needed for the programs to exist, and the fact that they also happened to do this experiment on the actual people that voted for them, or specifically about the people that supported them to put them in the position that they did, and now they're kind of semi-turning on them in order to kind of strip away the programs that kind of kept them throughout this entire pandemic. And then beyond the actual statistical, the numbers, the numerical, like the actual number side that no one can debate, I think really now the second and probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people are speculating that they really tried to end it in the end was sadly actually because of political reasons. Because it was noted by a lot of people that the statements or the reasonings they gave, such as like the worker shortage and everything, it's either so far been, well, a lot of people believe that it's either been just a lie, or it's just been a masked reasoning, or maybe it was a true reason to why they ended it, but it was kind of to cover a lot of the actual even more important reasons to why they wanted to end it. And one of the biggest ones to why many people are believing that they ended it now is really because of political reasons. Because I think the story to what really ended up happening is that there are still a lot of GOP Republicans, and again, trying to leave politics aside, but it's just because they're trying to involve politics into the situation, so it's almost impossible to not talk about politics without talking about this situation. But the story is because I think a lot of the GOP Republicans are still very, very bitter about what really ended up happening with all of the elections, the divide, the situation, especially last year, as most of you guys know, especially even this year, because keep in mind is that they're still debating and trying to battle out over the infrastructure bill, over the fourth stimulus package, over a lot of the programs that they're trying to do. And I think it's that because now that the Democrats are in, the complete blue wave, which again, leaving politics aside, the big thing to notice is that the only, or certainly the biggest reason why we were even able to get the third stimulus package to approve, certainly much easier than what the second stimulus package had to go through, was because we were finally able to complete the blue wave. So we were able to have a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, Democratic President. But it's just that I think that because a lot of the people on the GOP side, they're still very, very bitter. And I think it's because of that reason they're trying to use their power to basically just do whatever is the opposite of whatever their counterparts, so in this case a lot of the blue states, are trying to do. And so that was a huge motivation to why they're trying to strip away the unemployment. Now, of course, right now, half of this is a statistic. It's a number that no one can argue, for example, like the worker shortage and the jobs data. And then the other part is much more speculation and much more debatable, because it talks about what is probably going to likely happen from here. And it talks a lot more about like basically the underlying reasons that they won't necessarily say. But it'd be great, maybe feel free to share your personal thoughts, because I'm sure a lot about why you think they really ended unemployment. If it was political, if it was because of job numbers, or maybe it's a combination of everything, or maybe it's just a reason that we haven't really talked about right now. But in terms of whether or not it can come back, the true answer right now is it can come back, but the probability of whether it will come back is probably really hard to say. I honestly would say maybe it's like a true 50-50. I know people probably want, some kind of more concrete side, like yes or no, but the reality right now is that there are lawsuits that are about it. We did talk about it in a past video, which I'll also put at the end screen. Definitely check that if you guys haven't done so, as mentioned. So there are definitely lawsuits, there are protests, there are people that are pleading cases. We just don't know about whether or not they're gonna win. But even beyond that is that I think depending on how the job reports, the numbers, whether people actually physically go back to work, how the job market looks over the next couple of weeks will likely impact what ends up happening to not just the states that have already ended or that are set to end unemployment, but even the states that are hopefully able to stay on the program as much as possible. Basically, everything related to decisions about what happens is pretty much now going to lie on what people do actually physically about it in terms of trying to combat, and then of course the numbers, what the numbers actually physically end up looking like. But that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So maybe if you found something insightful, consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. And as always, feel free to comment any questions or personal thoughts or just ideas about honestly just really anything at all. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.